Now, the current situation for Snow White 2024 is putting Disney into a phase of panic and damage control, not just over this film, but also how this movie could very well create a domino effect of common moviegoers giving up on Disney movies and walking away from multiple franchises out there. And we already know that Bob Iger and the Disney Board of Directors are very incompetent to begin with and very deliberate with their attempts on all of this, but it's also, of course, some of the top shareholders like BlackRock and Vanguard that we really have to point the finger at. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about the Snow White marketing strategy is that they are going to begin their marketing campaign for this movie by the holiday season. So this is when you're going to see a lot of TV spots beginning to, unravel on the internet slowly but surely, leading into that March of 2024 release date window. There's been a lot of conversations between the Disney heads on whether or not they want to delay this movie to kind of compensate for what's been going on with all the strikes and the inability, by the way, to promote the film through actors, interviews, stuff like that. But what's interesting about this further has a lot to do with the Snow White trailer and why it is an epic disaster. So one thing about all of this is that we know that Disney is really trying to pretty much, double down on their marketing for Snow White. Even though that they did dial back on the funding of that, they want to make sure that they are going to dial down as much backlash as they can by taking out as much controversial, footage as possible. And still, it does not look like it's going to work. So let's go over all of this. Now, with Disney currently hitting a brick wall from avoiding one box office failure after the other, one major development has to do with the current cut of the Snow White trailer that is nearing completion by Disney's newly hired trailer company. Now, the plan is to release this during the holiday season, where one of the sequences presented for the Snow White trailer focuses on Snow White marching with the 7 magical creatures and singing a song throughout the Forbidden Forest. Now, in this shot, Zegler's Snow White is singing a song that involves anti-love lyrics that are backed up and performed by the 7 magical creatures. Only a snippet of this song is presented in the current cut of the trailer. Now, another sequence features Snow White seen punching and fighting one of the huntsmen that is out to fight her. The trailer involves a moment in which Zegler's Snow White can be seen snatching the dagger from the huntsman and pointing it directly at him, where the camera then zooms on Zegler's face as she smiles. Now, this shot specifically is overlaid with dialogue from The Evil Queen by Gal Gadot, where she actually delivered the iconic line, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" It then snaps back to the Forbidden Castle and home of the Evil Queen, where Gal Gadot is actually briefly seen as the old hag, transformed, where her evil laughter can be heard in the background. Now guys, let me say one thing about this so far, and why it's really looking to be a disaster. We already know that the 7 magical creatures are going to be the laughing stock of this movie. The fact that they are mixed up in a sequence where Rachel Zegler's Snow White sings a song about anti-love and all of that, and how they are actually treated as backup singers in a sense in this song, and it's briefly presented in this trailer, I think is just self-sabotage at this point by Disney. Why in the world would you want to present this in the trailer? I have no clue. Now, we already discussed about how weeks and weeks ago, Disney ditched the 2 trailer companies that were working on this actual trailer footage. The newest one of all doesn't seem to be doing a better job at all, and we know that Disney pretty much is beginning to learn that they cannot escape this ongoing catch-22. They really can't. As long as you have Zegler in there and the magical creatures, there is no way in the world that you are going to improve this movie. Period. The end. That's just the reality check for Disney right there. So, we already know that the marketing for this film has a lot going for it as far as funds go. We talked about this in the previous post, that they did have a plan, and are trying to cut back as much as they can, funding-wise, for $100 million plus for the marketing of Snow White. That is a lot of money, guys, for a movie like this that really has nothing going for it, that ditches the source material for the most part, mind you. But this is where it gets desperate, alright? Now, we know that they want to showcase the apple in the Snow White trailer, and this is where things begin to go downhill. Let's discuss. Now, one shot even focuses on an arm falling on the floor, followed by the poisonous apple rolling out of Snow White's hand. The most revealing moment of all features Andrew Burnap singing as his character Jonathan, where the magical creature, and creatures, I should say, are seen in the distance in front of their village, laughing and jumping up and down, playing musical instruments. This is likely connected to the third act of the film after the Evil Queen's demise, from previous leaks that we had discussed. Now, the worst of all features Snow White in the distance with a character codenamed the Protector, who is a masked character, punching and kicking training dummies that are fixated to a tree. This is reportedly some kind of defense training course that Snow White goes through in Act 1 of the film, and Disney is trying to set her up as a fighter, much like in Snow White and the Huntsman with Kristen Stewart. Now, again, I've said this right from the get-go, that Disney seemingly is trying to copy elements, and I say elements, not the plot, but elements, of Snow White and the Huntsman, and kind of throwing that into the Zegler featured film. And you can see that they want to make her a fighter. You can see that also in the leaked footage, where she is leading the way, leading the 7 creatures, you know, who initially were supposed to be the traditional 7 dwarfs, mind you, in the middle of nowhere in a field, alright? Now, we already know that this film is not only going to ditch the source material, but they're going to use familiar aspects to pretty much bait and switch the common moviegoers. You know, we know that the poisonous apple is going to be a main thing to kind of give fans some kind of level of familiarity, as well as the Evil Queen's design. Now, that is the one thing I feel that Snow White 2024 will have some kind of accuracy, is the design of the Evil Queen, not as the old hag, but as the normal Evil Queen, is pretty much on point. Besides that, everything is going to be vastly different and unrecognizable from the source material, and it's just looking like a trash fire at this point. You know, we know that during the holiday season, they have a lot of problems. Disney's going to be dealing with the fallout for the Marvels, the box office failure of that film, and following this movie, they're going to begin to debut the trailer of Snow White, and that's going to be really bad for Disney. The only saving grace for 2023 at this point in time for Disney is the movie Wish, and even that may very well fail at the box office, even though it doesn't have as much agenda-driven nonsense going into that film in the traditional sense of Disney. It still may very well not perform. It depends on how much traction it gets, how much, people want to go ahead and invest their time in that movie. Multiple factors are at play. So anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again.